The marketplace was alive with noise. Strange lights flickered across metal walls, and the air smelled of oil and sweat. Aliens of every shape filled the hall. Tall ones with crystal eyes, short ones with rough scales, wings, claws, and cold voices echoing under the high ceiling. They had gathered for one thing, to buy and sell slaves. At the center stood the auction platform, raised high so all could see. The auctioneer, a fat creature with silver rings in his ears, shouted with pride. He loved this job, he loved the laughter of the crowd, and today he had something special. "Half price," the auctioneer roared, his mouth twisting in a cruel smile. "Half price for the one-legged slave." He gestured, and guards pushed a thin girl forward, her face pale, her body trembling, her hair tangled and dirty. She limped on one side, her other leg replaced with a rough piece of metal. The crowd erupted with cruel laughter. Some slapped their hands against their chests, others hissed and spat. "Broken goods," one alien shouted. "Not even worth feeding," another mocked. The girl lowered her head. She had heard it all before. She had been dragged from one master to another, never treated as more than trash. The auctioneer raised his hand again. "Come now, who will start the bidding? Who will take this scrap of life for a handful of credits?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. "She may not walk well, but she can crawl fast enough." Again the laughter rang out. The girl's eyes, dark and empty, scanned the floor. She did not look at the crowd. She had learned long ago that looking only brought more pain. In her heart, she had stopped hoping. No one saw her as anything but worthless. Then, through the sea of aliens, a human stepped forward. The crowd fell a little quieter. Humans were rare here, some despised, some feared, but always noticed. This one walked calmly, his coat worn, his eyes sharp. He did not laugh like the others, he did not jeer, he simply stared at the girl with a look no one else had. The auctioneer sneered. "Ah, a human. You wish to bid on this broken thing," he laughed again. "Save your credits, buy a healthy worker. This one is half price for a reason." But the human raised a single finger, his voice calm and clear. "I'll take her," he said. The hall went silent for a breath, then exploded with cruel amusement. "Foolish human," one alien jeered. "Throwing credits in the dirt," another shouted. "He must like garbage." The laughter rolled louder than before. The girl lifted her eyes. For the first time in months, someone had spoken for her, not to mock, not to strike, but to claim her. She studied his face, waiting for the cruelty that always followed, but his eyes did not shine with hunger or hate. They shone with something else, something she could not name. The auctioneer shrugged. Credits were credits. He banged the hammer against the metal plate. "Sold to the human. May he enjoy his broken prize." The crowd cheered with laughter, but some whispered, puzzled. As the human stepped forward to take her chains, the girl's heart pounded. She did not understand. Why would a human waste money on her? Why not choose the strong ones, the clever ones? Why her? The guard shoved her toward him. She nearly fell, but the human caught her arm gently, his hand steady, his grip not cruel. He steadied her, whispered low, so only she could hear. "Stand tall." His words were simple, but they struck her like fire. The crowd still mocked. They shouted insults, but the human ignored them. He led her away, slow steps through the jeering sea. The girl limped beside him, half believing she was dreaming. Behind them, the auctioneer chuckled to himself, shaking his head. He had seen many foolish buyers. This human was only another name on the list. Soon he would regret it. Soon he would come crawling back to sell the broken slave again. But as the girl glanced at the human beside her, she saw no regret in his eyes, only something deep, as if he saw a secret no one else could. And for the first time in years, a spark of hope flickered in her chest. She did not know it yet, but this choice, this moment at the auction of shame, would change everything. For her, for the human, and for the galaxy that laughed without mercy. The alien market slowly faded behind them, the sounds of laughter and mockery still echoing in the distance. The human walked with calm steps, his coat brushing against the dusty floor, and beside him the girl limped, her chains heavy on her wrists, her heart heavier than the iron that bound her. She waited for the cruelty to begin. Every master before had shown the same face at first. Some smiled kindly, some stayed silent, but all turned cruel in the end. She expected the same. She expected a harsh word, a kick, or the whip. But the human said nothing cruel. He only led her to a small transport ship parked at the edge of the market, its hull old but clean, its engines humming low. He opened the ramp, guided her gently inside, and closed the door. The noise of the market disappeared, replaced by silence. The girl stood still, her one leg trembling. She looked around, expecting cages, chains, or dark corners where slaves were kept. Instead, she saw neat seats, a table with food, and water in a glass. The human walked to the table, poured water into another cup, and set it in front of her. His voice was calm. "Drink," he said. Her hands shook as she reached for it. She had not tasted clean water in days. She sipped carefully, expecting poison or a trick, but it was fresh and cool. It slid down her throat like life itself. She could not hide the small gasp of relief. The human watched her quietly, his eyes sharp but not cruel. "You are not trash," he said simply, "no matter what they told you." The girl froze. His words cut deeper than the chains. No master had ever said such things. No one had ever called her more than broken. She looked down, whispering in a thin voice, "Why me? Why waste credits on me?" The human leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping the table slowly. "Because I see something others do not," he said. "Because you are not what they think." His words were strange, but his tone carried weight. Her mind spun. She wanted to believe, but her years of pain chained her tighter than the iron. "I am weak. I cannot work. I am nothing," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears she tried to hide. The human shook his head. "You are not nothing. You are alive, and that means you have worth." His voice was steady, calm like stone. Silence filled the small ship, broken only by the hum of the engine. The girl stared at him, trying to understand, trying to find the hidden cruelty she was sure must be there, but she found none. He stood, walked to her, and unlocked her chains. The metal dropped with a heavy sound on the floor, her wrists red from years of bondage. She gasped, stepping back. She could not believe it. Slaves were never freed, not even for a moment. "Why?" she asked again, her voice trembling. The human looked at her with eyes that carried both steel and fire. "Because chains hide the truth, and I want to see who you really are," he answered. Her chest ached. She touched her freed wrists, the skin raw, the feeling of air strange and new. A storm of fear and hope rose inside her. He guided her to the seat, set food before her, bread and dried meat, simple but rich compared to the scraps she used to eat. "Eat," he said again. She ate slowly, carefully, as if the food might vanish, her eyes never leaving him. She wanted to ask more, but the weight of his calm silence kept her still. Finally, she whispered, "Do you own me now?" The human's eyes narrowed. He leaned closer. "No, I do not own you. You belong to yourself." His words were clear, yet strange in her ears. She had never belonged to herself. She had always belonged to someone else. He stood again, walked to the window, and stared at the stars outside. "The galaxy laughs at weakness," he said quietly. "But I have learned that sometimes weakness hides strength." His voice was sharp now, filled with something dangerous. The girl tilted her head, her heart racing. She sensed something behind his words, something greater than kindness, a plan, a purpose. She whispered, "What do you want from me?" The human turned, his eyes locked on hers. "I want you to survive," he said, "and I want you to remember who laughed at you, who called you worthless, because one day their laughter will die." Her breath caught. His words filled her with fear and fire at the same time. She did not know if he was mad or if he saw something she could not. But for the first time, she wondered if she might matter, if she might not be broken after all. The ship lifted from the ground, engines roaring, the market shrinking below them, the voices of the auctioneer and the cruel crowd fading into silence. The girl sat with her hands free, her belly full, and her heart burning with questions. She did not understand this human. She did not understand why he had chosen her, but she felt something new, something she thought she had lost forever, hope. The stars stretched across the window like rivers of light. The girl sat quietly in her seat, her freed wrists resting on her lap, her mind heavy with questions. The human moved calmly around the small ship, checking controls, adjusting dials, speaking little. For hours, silence filled the cabin, broken only by the hum of the engines. The girl's eyes wandered. She studied the walls, the screens, the glowing panels. She did not understand them, yet something inside her noticed patterns, tiny details others might ignore. She spoke softly, almost afraid. "That light should not blink so fast." Her finger pointed to a small corner of the control board. The human turned, his eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" Her face reddened. She looked down. "The light, it blinks wrong. I saw a ship once. When it blinked like that, it broke," she whispered. The human stepped closer, checked the system, and his eyes widened. She was right. A coolant valve was slipping. The system would have overheated in a few hours. He fixed it quickly, then turned back to her, his voice sharp but calm. "How did you know that?" She shook her head. "I just remembered. I notice things, sometimes too much, sometimes it makes others angry." The human studied her in silence, then leaned back, his eyes thoughtful. "Noticing what others miss is not weakness, it is strength," he said. The girl blinked. No one had ever called her talent strength, No one had ever cared. Most masters had struck her for speaking out. Most had laughed when she tried to warn them. Later, as the ship moved through empty space, the human laid a small device on the table, a puzzle box with strange lines and locks. "Solve it," he said simply. Her eyes widened. She reached for it slowly, her fingers trembling. She turned it once, twice, her mind racing. She felt the weight, the shape, the rhythm of the locks. In minutes, the box clicked open. The human's lips curved in the smallest hint of a smile. "Again," he said, handing her another, this time harder. The girl's brow furrowed. She turned it, pressed, listened. The sound of each click, guiding her, it opened faster than before. Her heart beat faster. She looked at him with confusion. "Why are you testing me?" she whispered. The human sat across from her, his eyes unblinking. "Because I know what others do not see. You are not broken. You are sharp. Your mind is clear, sharper than they could imagine." The girl felt heat in her chest. Her heart wanted to believe, but her scars whispered otherwise. "I am still useless. I cannot fight. I cannot walk like others," she said bitterly. The human leaned forward, his voice steady. "Strength is not only in muscle. Sometimes the greatest weapons are hidden in the mind." She froze, her breath shallow, his words wrapped around her like chains of fire. That night, when the human rested in his chair, the girl sat awake, staring at the stars, her mind replaying his words. She remembered her past. She had once been in the service of a powerful alien lord, a cruel master, but she had noticed too much. She had seen numbers, patterns, codes. She had spoken out once, and he had punished her, broken her body, sold her as trash. She whispered to herself, "Maybe I am not nothing." The words felt strange, almost forbidden. In the morning, the human placed maps before her, star charts with paths drawn across them. "Look at these," he said. "Find the safe way." She frowned, her eyes scanning the charts, stars blurred, lines crossed, but slowly, her mind picked them apart. She pointed to one path. "This one, fewer patrols, faster," she said. The human checked, his jaw tightened. She was correct again. He nodded slowly. "You see the paths others miss. You will help me more than you know." His words were quiet but heavy. The girl's heart raced. She was terrified but also alive. Every test revealed more. Every word he spoke planted seeds of something new, something dangerous. As the hours passed, he trained her in small tasks, numbers, codes, signals, her fingers shaky at first but growing steady, her eyes lighting with each success. Once, she looked at him and whispered, "Why me? Why save me when so many others laughed?" The human's gaze grew dark, his voice low. "Because I know what they cannot see. Because I know the galaxy is blind, and blind crowds always mock what they do not understand." Her breath caught. She stared at him, realizing he was not just kind. He was planning something vast. For the first time, the girl felt more than survival. She felt the spark of purpose, the echo of destiny. The ship drifted on through the endless dark, but inside, a new light burned. A broken slave was beginning to see herself not as worthless, but as something rare. She did not yet know how far her hidden talent would take her, nor how dangerous the path ahead would become. But the human knew, and he was preparing her for it. The ship glided through the black sea of stars. Days passed in quiet rhythm. The girl learned to read the glowing maps, to unlock small puzzles, to spot danger in blinking lights. The human spoke little, but when he did, his words always carried weight. One evening, as the stars burned red outside the window, the human sat across from her, his face half in shadow, his voice low. "Do you know why I bought you?" he asked. The girl lowered her eyes. Fear touched her heart. "Because you pitied me," she whispered. The human shook his head slowly. "No, not pity. I saw in you something more," he said, his tone sharp as a blade. "I saw a survivor." Her breath caught. She looked up, her lips trembling. "A survivor," she repeated. The word felt heavy on her tongue. The human leaned closer, his voice quiet but fierce. "The galaxy is built on cruelty. The strong laugh at the weak. The rulers crush the broken, but they forget one thing." He paused, his eyes burning. "The weak remember, the broken endure, and one day they rise." Her heart pounded. She had never heard words like these. No one had ever spoken of the weak as if they had power. The human placed a small device on the table, a communicator cracked and old. "There are whispers out there, hidden in shadows, whispers of humans who will not bow," he said. "Colonies tired of alien masters, voices waiting for a spark." The girl's eyes widened. Her fingers brushed the device. "Rebellion," she whispered, almost afraid to say it. The human nodded once. "Yes, rebellion." His voice was iron. "And I will need those who can see what others miss, those who have suffered and still breathe." She stared at him, her chest tight. But I am broken. I cannot fight, she said, her voice trembling. The human's gaze hardened. You can think, you can see, you can lead in ways others cannot. Your scars do not make you weak, they make you dangerous to those who thought you worthless. Her lips parted, her body shivered, his words struck deep. She wanted to reject them, but part of her longed to believe. That night she lay awake on her bunk, the stars outside glowing like fire. Her mind replayed his words. Rebellion, rise, survivor. They echoed louder than the jeers of the market, louder than the laughter of the auctioneer. Memories came back. Memories she had buried, the cruel alien lord who once owned her, the halls where she had been beaten, the nights when she wished for death. She remembered numbers on walls, codes she could see when others ignored them, secrets whispered when they thought she slept. Perhaps the human was right. Perhaps survival was its own strength. The next day they landed on a barren moon, a secret meeting place. The human led her into a dark cave lit by hidden lamps. Inside, other humans waited, men and women hardened by war, their eyes fierce, their voices hushed. This is her, the human said simply, placing his hand on the girl's shoulder. The galaxy laughed at her, called her broken, but I tell you this, she will see what we cannot. The others studied her, some doubtful, some curious. One woman frowned. A slave, she muttered. What use is she to us? The human's eyes flashed. Do not call her that. She is more than what chains tried to make her. His voice was like thunder in the small cave. The girl shrank back, fear and shame clawing at her. But deep inside, something sparked, a voice whispering, prove them wrong. Later, while the group discussed plans, she sat near the edge listening, her ears catching details others missed, movements of patrol ships, secret codes hidden in trade signals. She whispered once to the human, and he tested her thought. She was right. Again, the others began to notice, their doubt turning into curiosity, their eyes shifting from scorn to quiet respect. That night, when the group rested, the human spoke to her again, his voice steady. You are part of something greater now. You are no longer a slave. You are a spark. Her breath caught. She felt the weight of his words. She did not fully believe yet, but hope was no longer a stranger. As the ship left the moon, she sat by the window, her reflection staring back at her, a thin girl with one leg, scars on her wrists, eyes once empty, now burning with new fire. The galaxy outside was vast, cruel, merciless, but for the first time, she did not feel small. She did not feel worthless. She felt like a piece of a secret storm, a storm that would one day shake the laughter out of those who mocked her. The ship drifted through the silent dark, its engines soft, its lights dim. The girl sat by the window, her freed wrists resting on her knees, her mind full of whispers, rebellion, survival, hope. These words had become seeds inside her, growing each day. But freedom always carried a price, and soon that price came knocking. It began with a signal, a sharp pulse on the scanner. The human frowned, his eyes narrowing. Patrol ships, he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. They are looking for us. The girl's heart raced. For us, she whispered. The human nodded. The auctioneer would have spoken. They will not forget a human who bought a slave they called worthless. His lips tightened. They suspect something. The scanner beeped again, closer now. 2 alien cruisers sliding into view, their hulls glowing with cruel light. The human turned sharply. Strap in, he ordered, his hands flying over the controls. The girl clutched the seat, fear filling her chest. She remembered chains, whips, jeering laughter. She remembered what capture meant. The ships moved fast, weapons hot. Their voices filled the calm, harsh alien tones demanding surrender. The human ignored them. His ship dove into an asteroid field, rocks spinning around them, sparks of light bursting as weapons fired. The girl's breath shook, but her eyes stayed wide, scanning, searching. Then she gasped. There, that gap. She pointed to a cluster of spinning stones. If you turn now, the cruisers will follow and crash. The human glanced, his eyes sharp. He pulled the ship hard to the left. Their vessel slipped through the narrow gap. The cruisers tried to follow. Too large, too fast. One struck a rock. The other spun out. The girl gripped the seat, her heart racing. I saw it, she whispered, almost not believing. The human's lips curved in the smallest smile. Yes, you did, and you saved us. His voice carried pride, not mockery. Her chest burned. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever told her she saved anything. But the chase was not over. More signals lit the scanner, more ships coming. The human's jaw tightened. They will not stop. They know we are carrying more than they can see. The girl trembled. What do we do? The human looked at her, his voice low but fierce. We fight. We run. We survive. Because freedom has a price, and we must pay it. For hours they evaded patrols, slipping through shadows, dodging blasts of fire. The girl's eyes sharp, spotting patterns, guiding paths. Each time the human listened, each time she was right, but each escape left them weaker, fuel low, food running thin, their ship carrying scars of battle. One night, after another narrow escape, the girl sat by the table, her hands shaking. "They will never stop, will they?" she whispered. The human poured water into her cup, his eyes dark. "No, they will not. Because they fear what we could become. They fear the idea that the weak may rise." The girl's lips trembled. She stared into the cup. "I never asked for this," she said softly. The human leaned forward, his voice steady. "None of us ask for chains. None of us ask for cruelty. But when we are given them, we have a choice. Break or fight. You chose to live. And that is enough." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded slowly, his words cut deep, heavy yet true. Later, during a raid on a supply outpost, the danger became sharper. Alarms screamed, guards filled the halls, the human fought with quick strikes, his body moving like iron, but he could not be everywhere. The girl hid behind crates, her breath sharp. Then she saw it, the pattern of guard patrols, the rhythm of footsteps, the blinking of the alarm lights. She whispered to herself, piecing it together. When the human slipped into cover near her, she grabbed his arm. "Wait, not that way. If you go left, they will trap you. Go right when the red light blinks," she said fast. He trusted her. He moved exactly as she said, and the path cleared, the two of them slipping past the guards unseen. When they reached the ship, when the engines roared to life, the human looked at her, his eyes burning with something more than respect. "You are not my burden," he said firmly. "You are my ally." Her breath caught. The word struck her like fire. Ally. She sat in silence, her chest tight, her heart full. Never had anyone placed her beside them as equal. Never had anyone given her that name. The price of freedom was heavy. It was blood, fear, hunger. But it was also this. The spark of being seen, the flame of being valued. The girl, once laughed at, once called worthless, was becoming something else. She was becoming a voice in the storm, a piece of the rebellion's fire. And though the galaxy hunted them, though enemies grew each day, she felt no chains on her wrists, only the weight of purpose. The price of freedom was high, but she was ready to pay it. The galaxy spread endless and dark, but inside the human ship, a new light grew. The girl who once stood on an auction block, mocked and sold for half price, now sat at the center of plans that could shake empires. Each day the human tested her. Each day he pushed her to notice what others missed. She read codes hidden in transmissions. She traced patrol routes through scattered reports, her mind sharp as a blade, and slowly the others began to listen. When they docked at secret bases, the rebels looked at her with doubt. Some still whispered she was a slave, broken, useless. But then they saw her work. They saw her predictions come true. Ships avoided ambushes, raids struck with perfect timing, and the whispers changed. Soon, the name of the one-legged girl spread through the hidden network, not as trash, not as broken, but as the girl who saved fleets, the girl who turned losses into victories. At first, she shrank from their praise, her voice trembling. "I am nothing. I do not deserve this." But the human stood beside her, his voice firm. "You are more than they ever dreamed. Stand tall." And each time he said it, she grew a little taller. One night, in a hidden cave lit by lamps, she faced a group of leaders, scarred men and women, veterans of endless battles. They questioned her directly. "What do you see?" they asked, pointing at maps filled with enemy strongholds. Her heart pounded, fear whispering in her chest, but she leaned forward, tracing her finger across the map. "They move here, not because of strength, but because they are afraid. They hide their weakness in this path," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. The leaders looked at each other, doubtful at first, but when her words proved true days later, when the enemy fell exactly as she predicted, they returned with respect in their eyes. The rebels began to whisper her name with awe. The girl who sees what others cannot. Still, the memory of the auctioneer's laughter haunted her. Still, she remembered the jeers, the chains, the cold hands that once pushed her down, but now those memories became fuel, fire that burned inside. She swore to herself that she would never crawl again. The human noticed her change. He saw how she walked taller, even on her single leg, how her eyes no longer stared at the floor, but at the stars. One evening he spoke softly. "You are not the girl I bought at the market. You are something greater." Her voice shook but carried pride. "I am not broken anymore," she whispered. He nodded. "No, you never were. The galaxy was blind, but now they will see." News spread through whispers and secret signals. Tales of a human and a once broken slave building something dangerous. Slaves in distant colonies began to hear her story. They whispered it in chains. The one-legged girl rose, and hope stirred in places where there had been none. But with hope came danger. The enemy grew desperate. Patrols doubled, traps laid in silence, and once more she was tested. During a raid, the rebels found themselves surrounded, ships closing from every side. Fear filled the halls. Men shouted, some ready to surrender. The girl stood in the center, trembling but fierce, her mind racing. She saw the trap. She saw the one weak point in the circle. She raised her voice, louder than fear. Not left, not right, straight through the center. Their strongest guard the sides, their weakest hide in the middle. Strike there. The human looked at her, then at the others. His voice thundered, "You heard her, move!" The rebels obeyed. The fleet roared forward, breaking through the center as she said. The enemy scattered in confusion, and for the first time the girl stood not behind others but in front, her voice leading them out of doom. When the battle ended, cheers filled the ships. Men and women chanted her name, the girl who cannot be broken, and she felt tears on her cheeks, not of sorrow, but of pride. Later that night, sitting alone by the window, she whispered to herself, "They called me worthless, but now they follow me." The stars reflected in her eyes, burning with fire. The human joined her, his voice calm. "You rose from chains to lead. Remember this. Never forget who you were. Never forget who mocked you, because you will show them what true worth is." She nodded, her hands tightening, her heart fierce. The galaxy had once laughed, had once called her half-price, broken, trash, but now those same voices whispered her name with furrows. Ear and awe. The rise of the worthless girl had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. The galaxy trembled with unrest. Colonies rose in secret. Chains rattled in rebellion. Whispers spread like fire. All carried the same tale. A human and a broken girl who was no longer broken. She had become a symbol, the one-legged girl who saw what others could not. The girl who turned weakness into strength. The girl who stood against empires. Her name passed from mouth to mouth, a spark in the dark. The human and his allies struck where the enemy least expected. Supply lines cut, patrols vanished, strongholds crumbled. Each time her sharp eyes guided them, each time her voice turned fear into fire. And far away, in the market where it began, the auctioneer heard the whispers. At first he laughed. "Impossible," he scoffed. "She was worthless, half-price, trash." But the whispers grew louder until fear crept into his laughter. One night, in the shadow of a great battle, the rebels struck the very world where the auctioneer still worked, their fleet cutting through defenses, their forces landing with thunder. The market shook with chaos, and for the first time, the auctioneer trembled. He tried to flee, his fat body heaving through the crowded alleys, jewels clinking, his voice begging guards to protect him. But the rebellion moved like fire, and there was no escape. At last he was dragged into the same auction hall where he had once stood proud, chains now on his wrists. The crowd turned, but this time the laughter was not for him, it was against him. At the center of the hall stood the girl, no longer thin and trembling, no longer broken. She stood tall, her crutch steady under her arm, her eyes sharp as steel, scars on her skin but fire in her soul. The crowd fell silent when they saw her. The auctioneer's mouth opened, words spilling in panic. You, I remember. You half-price, worthless, I only joked, I did not mean." His voice cracked with fear. The girl stepped forward, her voice calm, strong, echoing through the hall. "You laughed at me, you mocked my pain, you sold me like garbage, but I endured, I survived, and now I stand here not as your slave, but as your judge." The hall roared with cheers. The rebels raised their fists, chanting her name. The auctioneer fell to his knees, shaking. "Mercy, please, mercy," he begged. The human stepped beside her, his eyes steady. "What will you do?" he asked softly. The girl looked down at the trembling figure, the memory of his cruel laughter ringing in her ears. For years she had dreamed of this moment, to strike him, to make him suffer as she had, but she remembered the human's words, words that had carried her from chains to freedom. Humans do not measure worth in flesh, but in spirit. Her lips parted, her voice steady. "I will not become what you were. I will not sink to your cruelty. You will live, and you will watch as those you mocked rise higher than you ever dreamed." The auctioneer froze, stunned. Mercy was not what he expected. Mercy cut deeper than vengeance. The human's hand rested on her shoulder, pride shining in his eyes. "You chose well," he whispered. The rebels dragged the auctioneer away, his cries fading into the distance, but the hall remained alive with voices, all chanting her name, not as a slave, not as broken, but as a leader, a symbol. She stood at the platform, the very place where she had once been shamed. Her voice rose above the crowd. They called me worthless, but I am proof that no one is worthless. They called me broken, but I am proof that scars can rise stronger than flesh. And I tell you now, the weak will rise, the broken will lead, and the galaxy will never laugh again. The hall shook with thunderous cheers, voices of every shape, every scar, shouting together, a storm of hope. That night, as the stars burned Brig, hot, the girl sat by the window of the human ship once more, her reflection staring back, no longer empty, no longer afraid. She whispered to herself, I am not half price, I am not broken, I am free. The human sat beside her, his voice calm but fierce. The galaxy will remember you. And so it was. The story of a girl sold for half price, mocked as worthless, rose to echo across worlds, to break chains, to light flames, to remind all that humans see worth where others see nothing. The auctioneer had laughed once, but in the end the galaxy no longer laughed, it listened.